In every gathering, whether formal or casual, an unspoken order quietly arranges itself like shadows aligning with the light. There's always a current, a silent code of perception that determines who matters and who fades into the backdrop. The people at the top of that order don't scan the room with equal interest. They don't waste attention. They look for contrast, for presence for those who signal intention without saying a word. And far too many people disappear, not because they whisper or remain humble, but because they emit cues that silently scream they have no gravitational pull. They signal, without realizing it, I'm forgettable. Niccolo Machiavelli wasn't a scribe of the common crowd. His words weren't lullabies for the passive. They were field manuals for those who understood that true influence lies not in volume, but in impact. You can fill the room with noise and still not be felt. You can dress for attention and still vanish in the eyes of power. When certain behaviors are embedded in how you carry yourself, they repel respect, opportunity, and acknowledgement like oil repels water. And it starts with what you transmit the moment you enter. When someone moves with inward curled energy, they collapse before they even speak. They don't stand. They fold. Eyes downcast, steps hesitant, shoulders caved inward as if they're trying to disappear into the seams of the carpet. In contrast, the kind of person who commands interest arrives with awareness reaching out like invisible limbs, feeling the shape of the room, sensing where influence pools and where it drains. Their presence doesn't ask for attention. It declares it. When your default is self-containment instead of outward projection, you ghost yourself before others get the chance. People in positions of authority don't waste bandwidth on those who appear already defeated. If you're sending the message that you don't believe in your own impact, why would anyone else bother pretending you do? Appearance isn't just vanity, it's strategic armor. Fail to show up in posture and gaze, and you make the job easier for those who want to ignore you. You've already checked yourself out of relevance. The test begins at the threshold. Your shoulders must speak. Your eyes must roam like a sovereign assessing his domain. Your movement should imply, I belong here. But presence isn't just physical. It lives in voice too. When your speech trembles with uncertainty, even when the content is strong, the room registers your lack of conviction. You might choose bold words, but if your tone rises like a question or your delivery trails off like a confession, what people actually hear is doubt. When someone litters their sentences with, sorry, or nervous qualifiers, they telegraph subordination. They unconsciously ask for consent to be heard. Machiavelli understood that speech isn't just communication, it's a sword, not one to be flailed wildly but honed and precise. Real power speaks with stillness, calm rhythm, intentional pacing, low frequency, nothing rushed, nothing diluted. No need to fill silence. Silence becomes a partner, an amplifier. Speak briefly and let that brevity hold weight. Don't crave audience. Expect it. People don't lean in because you're loud. They lean in because they sense you won't say something unless it matters. Then comes the reflexive laughter, a laugh that doesn't belong, a chuckle offered too quickly, a smile that appears not from joy but from fear of social friction. That kind of laughter is a red flag to the discerning. It announces submission, telegraphs, please like me, and renders you harmless in the worst possible way. Especially when the laugh follows sarcasm, a slight dig, or a joke that carries a quiet insult. People in control often throw out subtle tests, rude remarks masked in playfulness. They don't want to offend you. They want to see if you'll still seek approval after being diminished. The one who laughs in such moments forfeits their ground. They mark themselves as someone who would rather be accepted than respected. And that's a trade the powerful are happy to let you make. Don't respond with grins when met with condescension. Meet it with quiet. Let the air hold the tension. Don't diffuse it. Your silence will do more than words ever could. Stillness unsettles. Composure challenges. And when someone can't read you, they tread carefully. That confusion? That's leverage. You might not even realize how often you over-explain. You answer a question but then spiral, layering detail after detail, building walls of narrative around a simple point. You do it not because it's needed, but because you're unsure your words have value unless dressed in excessive logic. To the powerful, that's a neon sign flashing insecurity. They don't hear clarity, they hear overcompensation. And when you pour too much into a statement, you cheapen it. It becomes noise, not signal. Those who command space don't explain endlessly. They speak, then pause. Let others ask for elaboration if they're interested. Let them do the work. Your value is not in how much you say, but in how little you need to. Each word should have weight. Each pause should imply that more could be said, but doesn't need to be. Control the flow of words, and you control the room's rhythm. All these subtle signals accumulate. They don't shout failure. They murmur insignificance. And the truth is, no one gives you another shot once they've labeled you forgettable. If your first impression radiates meekness, you're skipped. Not out of malice, but out of calculation. Environments where influence circulates don't reward potential. They reward presence. And if you don't know how to wield posture, delivery, and restraint, you become background decoration. You've likely walked away from moments thinking you just missed your chance. But the truth is harsher. You weren't noticed in the first place. You weren't dismissed. You were unseen, not because of fate or conspiracy, but because of practice. You trained yourself into invisibility one compromise at a time. Each time you quieted your voice when it mattered. Each time you nodded instead of saying no. Each moment you chose to blend instead of assert. You sculpted a version of yourself that power doesn't see. People with presence aren't born under spotlights. They just never abandon their shape. The moment you bend too far to accommodate, you start dissolving. Those who hold power don't necessarily look for others to crush. They just remove the irrelevant from their focus. If you carry the scent of self-doubt, they detect it instantly and disregard you, not with cruelty, but with indifference. They don't operate from emotion. They operate from economy. And the currency they respect is presence. When you wait to be welcomed into a conversation, you're declaring your status as an outsider. You might sit at the table, but your voice is silent until summoned. You might hover at the edge of a dialogue, waiting for a gesture to enter, hoping someone creates space for you. But the powerful don't make room. They expect you to take it. They observe who dares to move forward without permission. Because those who wait to be chosen have already admitted uncertainty. Inserting yourself isn't arrogance when done with timing and clarity. It's signal. It says, I'm not here to audition. I'm here to contribute. Make your presence known by adding value, then going quiet. Not every word must linger, but the right ones will echo. Those who hesitate fade. Those who deliver with precision even once are remembered. And when you backtrack on your values to avoid discomfort, you dismantle your authority before it's built. You say you believe in certain things, that you hold lines others shouldn't cross. But the moment someone challenges those lines, you stammer, you explain, you rationalize, and in doing so, you make your standards look like preferences, not principles. Power respects those who don't negotiate their foundation. Say no with finality. Exit situations without apology. Allow your boundaries to exist without having to justify them. If someone pushes against what you've declared, meet them not with resistance. but with immovability. You don't have to defend what you won't change. A firm stance speaks louder than any moral debate. Standards delivered with poise become law, and law doesn't apologize. Even compliments can betray your status. When you distribute praise like candy, it becomes flavorless. Nice job. That's so impressive. You're amazing. All intended as warmth, but heard as neediness. When you praise without discretion, the powerful sense you're trying to earn a place, not speak as an equal. And when that happens, you give them leverage. Withhold approval until it carries weight. Let praise be rare, intentional, and specific. Make it feel like recognition, not flattery. When your compliments feel earned, they strike deeper. The powerful don't listen to echoes. They listen to originality, especially when it's disciplined. The need to mirror others is another quiet killer. You adjust how you speak to match their rhythm. You adopt their mannerisms, their slang, their emotional tone. You think you're creating harmony, but in truth, you're dimming your edges. When you mold yourself to match everyone around you, you become formless. Power doesn't respect the chameleon. It respects the anchor. Refuse to morph just to make others comfortable. Let your tone remain steady even if it contrasts with the room. Don't mirror gestures. Let difference exist. Because real presence doesn't fear tension. It creates it and endures it. When you don't flinch, when you don't accommodate, when you remain whole in difference, people take note. Not because you've won them over, but because you've stayed intact. Even gratitude has a place and a time. If your first instinct is to thank someone for letting you speak or express appreciation before the interaction even begins, you've surrendered your frame. Thank you for your time sounds polite, but it often reveals an internal belief. I'm the one gaining the most here. Gratitude offered before parity is established tells the room you see yourself as lesser. Instead, speak with balance first. Let the dynamic find equilibrium before acknowledging benefits. Gratitude means more when it comes from a place of strength, not submission. When you lead with deference, you place yourself below. When you hold your stance and then express thanks, it lands with mutual respect. These habits don't scream incompetence, they whisper dismissal. And in rooms where influence is currency, whispers are all that's needed. The people you want to notice, you aren't studying you. They're scanning. And what they feel in the briefest moments, those small tells of posture, tone, timing, are enough to file you away as background. Not disliked, not judged, simply unacknowledged. And that's worse. Because when you're invisible to power, you're invisible to what power can unlock. But this isn't the end of the story. This is where transformation begins. The second part will delve deeper into the final identity-level behaviors that determine whether you're someone others feel or forget. There's a particular moment, unspoken, invisible, when a person enters a room and begins surveying the social terrain, not out of confidence, but a deep, conditioned need for safety. Their eyes flick between faces, looking for familiarity or warmth, anything to shield them from unpredictability. They adjust their expression to match the tone of the group, edit their statements in real time based on how others react, softening sharp edges until all that remains is a shape molded by the comfort of others. This isn't presence, it's camouflage, born of fear. And those who move with that fear serve, inevitably, those who do not. True power is comfortable with friction. The kind of individual who holds social gravity doesn't need every moment to be smooth. In fact, they often sharpen the air just by existing. They let conflict hang unresolved. They don't feel the itch to soothe it. When they speak, They don't trace faces for approval. They drop words like stones and watch the ripples. Silence doesn't scare them. Tension doesn't rattle them. Emotional chaos doesn't send them running. This ability to remain unfazed isn't arrogance, it's sovereignty. Because once you require harmony to be effective, you've made your power conditional. Those addicted to emotional ease make excellent servants in a hierarchy. They become buffers, peacekeepers, soothers, the ones who clean up after intensity, who smooth over awkward moments with laughs, apologies, or rapid transitions. But in doing so, they steal from their own presence. They empty themselves to carry the comfort of others. And the room forgets them not out of cruelty, but because they have removed all texture from their identity. To be remembered, you must be felt. And to be felt, you must be willing to stand in the storm and not shrink. It's in the way you sit, the way you stand. Your physical form tells the room how much space you believe you're allowed to take. Crossed arms, hunched shoulders, legs drawn inward, eyes darting downward. All these signs form a picture of a person minimizing themselves. This is not humility. This is surrender at the level of posture. The powerful don't need to speak to sense this. They see it in a flash and categorize accordingly. Non-threat. The human body speaks louder than intention. You could possess genius ideas, sharp insights, deep wisdom. But if your body folds in like an apology, your voice may never get the chance. Sit wide. Plant your feet. Keep your back long, chin level. Let your eyes settle, not dart. Posture is an anchor, and when it holds firm, it teaches your mind to believe in its own worth. You don't just exist in the room anymore. You begin to frame it. A dangerous delusion infects many minds, the belief that meaning well is enough. That pure intention can compensate for poor delivery, insecure tone, scattered presence. But the world doesn't see your inner monologue. It sees what you show. The desire to be kind, thoughtful, or generous is meaningless if it's cloaked in behaviors that whisper submission. Goodness is not a shield. It is not armor. It is silent. And without strong signals, it is invisible. People often over-identify with their moral compass, believing their kind heart will be self-evident, that their thoughtfulness will beam through any surface. But this assumption creates blindness. Because when your actions signal need, when your voice trembles or your stance wavers, no one digs deeper to discover your virtue. They just move on. Power doesn't read biographies. It reacts to presence. It responds to what is seen, not what is hidden. You aren't rewarded for the integrity you hide. You are remembered for the clarity you project. Adjust how you land, not just how you feel. You could be the most ethical person in the room and still be dismissed because your signals were muddied with hesitation, over-explanation, or apology. It's not the intention behind the move, it's the impact it makes on others. And until you separate your self-worth from your good intentions and tie it instead to your self-presentation, you will remain under-acknowledged. There is another lie people carry quietly, the belief that influence is something to be earned through time, deference, and approval. That if you prove yourself long enough, stay polite enough, and wait patiently enough, someone will eventually hand you a golden key. This is not how influence works. It never has. Power isn't bestowed on the meek. It is assumed by the certain. Those who hold sway don't ask for recognition. They carry themselves as though it already exists, and in time others fall in line. To carry yourself with that kind of certainty is not to pretend or to inflate. It's to know. It's to walk into a space with a presence that implies gravity. You don't speak to gain favor. You speak because you believe your voice bends outcomes. You don't request acknowledgement. You expect it. Your posture doesn't ask questions. It creates consequence. And when this is done, without arrogance or desperation. The room adapts to you, not out of fear, but because ignoring you becomes risky. You must abandon the belief that respect follows service. Respect follows clarity. When you speak like someone who knows his words could shift momentum, people adjust. They weigh your silence differently. They wonder what you're thinking, not because you demanded attention, but because you refuse to chase it. The spotlight moves toward those who walk like they belong beneath it, not those who hope to earn it. Think back to all those small behaviors, each one so innocent on its own. A laugh here, a soft apology there, a compliment tossed out reflexively, a backstory offered to prove your worth. None of them scream weakness, but stacked together, they paint a portrait of someone unsure, someone who seeks approval like oxygen, someone who doesn't quite believe they deserve to be seen without asking. This is why opportunity doesn't stop at your feet. It doesn't slow down for those signaling ambiguity. It looks for certainty. It moves toward grounded presence. And if you've carried these habits for years, it's not because you're fragile. It's because you were trained to be agreeable, to be safe, to be non-disruptive. You were taught that politeness guarantees success, that likability is the gateway to power. But Machiavelli, in his brutal wisdom, understood something deeper. Power respects those who assume it, not perform it, not beg for it, but become it. The ones who rise aren't always the most skilled or even the most charismatic. They're the ones who've deleted every behavior that waters down their signal, who've burned the parts of themselves that reached out for approval like beggars. What's left in their place isn't noise, it's force. Quiet, still, unmoving force. So imagine this. You walk into a room with no urgency. Not slow, not fast, just inevitable. You don't scan for permission to speak. You don't raise your voice for attention. You don't match their cadence. You set your own. Your tone is calm. Your sentences land like markers. You don't explain. You don't flinch. You let your presence ask questions they can't articulate. Who is this? Why does he feel different? Why do I want to listen? And when someone tests you, they'll do it quietly, through sarcasm, through undermining humor, through subtle shifts in tone. But you don't offer a laugh. You don't show your hand. You don't mirror their posture. You don't defend. You simply remain still. Let them wonder. Let them fill in the blanks, because the moment someone can't categorize you, you've gained power. The ambiguity becomes your protection. They hesitate, unsure if you're threat or ally, and that uncertainty becomes your aura. This is the essence of visibility, not being looked at, but being studied. When you embody presence, others hesitate before dismissing you. They feel they might regret it, that overlooking you could be costly, that underestimating you may lead to unexpected consequence. And so, for the first time, they look, not out of politeness, but because you leave them no other choice. You don't need to seek their validation. You need to become the kind of person who no longer leaves space for dismissal. That's what presence really is, not noise, not performance, but subtraction. Every layer of softness peeled away, every trace of approval seeking erased, every reflex to explain, to adjust, to charm, gone. And what remains? Something undeniable, something solid, something heavy in its stillness. That's when you no longer have to fight to be seen, because visibility isn't a request, it's a consequence. It's what happens when all that's left of you is gravity. Now look back on each habit you've lived with. Every one of them was a form of self-betrayal, a quiet signal saying, I don't trust who I am unless you approve of it. That mindset ends now, not because you've decided to change how you feel, but because you've chosen to change how you land. You don't need to raise your voice. You need to lower your softness. You don't need to explain yourself. You need to let silence hold your confidence. You don't need to earn presence. You need to strip everything that dilutes it. And once that shedding begins, once the polite armor drops, something magnificent unfolds. You stop being someone who enters rooms. You start being someone who changes them. The center doesn't always shout. Sometimes it stands still, and everyone else orbits. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. And in the world Machiavelli tried to show us, the world of strategy, perception, and subtle warfare, that's how kings are made.